Welcome to Talking Tobacco, Episode 3. In this episode, I sit down with pipe maker J Blanchard. I met Jay years ago through a friend of mine, and then years later, figured out that Jay makes pipes. I had no idea. So we had that in common over the last few years talking about that. It's been a lot of fun. I've bought a couple of Jay's pipes over the last 2 years, and he just recently created an Instagram page, which he mentions during the interview, but then he has since changed the name to this. It's J Blanchard _pipes, and I'll put that in the show notes if you're interested in checking out his photos or commissioning a pipe. Jay's more interested in the pipe making process and the pipe smoking than the pipe tobacco, and you'll hear that during this conversation. He'll also tell a story of me shipping him out a bunch of samples of different families of tobaccos, Englishes and Burleys and some Virginia, just to try to expand his palate a little bit, because I don't think he knew what he was missing. And you'll also hear about Jay's pipe origin story, how he started smoking a pipe, which is also a lot of fun. So sit back and relax and enjoy my conversation with pipe maker J Blanchard. J Blanchard here, pipe tobacco enthusiast and pipe maker. Jay, give us a little bit of your background. Where are you from originally, and where are you now?
So my father was in the Air Force, so I happened to be born in Kittery, Maine, believe it or not. But they were all from Texas. They all grew up in Port Neches Groves, Texas, and so as soon as we could, we ended up back in Texas. So I grew up in the Beaumont area in southeast Texas. I grew up in a little town outside of Beaumont called Vidor, Texas, and then I went to Texas A&M, and then I lived in Austin, and then we relocated in 2006 to Houston, and that's how I ended up in Houston.
So how did you start smoking a pipe? Who introduced you to it?
So in my case, it started quite literally in the sense that every summer my dad would rent a beach house on Bolivar Peninsula, and we would go and stay there all summer. And the only thing that he would, this predates the internet, this predates cable TV even. So we'd go there, and all that he would bring is a book bag with just a ton of books in it. And one year I started reading Sherlock Holmes, the complete works of Conan Doyle. So I read all the Sherlock Holmes books one summer, and Sherlock had all these neat tricks with pipe tobacco. He could look at the ash in an ashtray, and he could tell you what type of tobacco it was and where it came from. It was all, I mean, I'm sure it was all fiction, but it made such an impression on a 10-year-old, or 11-year-old, that, I was just like, well, this is the coolest guy ever. And then I saw, the next summer, we went back, and I had seen the cartoon for The Hobbit. It was one that came out in the 70s, and I remember watching Bilbo had this long pipe and he smoked it. And I thought the story of The Hobbit was interesting. So then I read the book over the summer. And at that point, I was actually hooked on the notion that I was going to get a pipe. So when I was 16 years old, there was a store. I was old enough to buy tobacco then. That's how long ago it was. You could buy tobacco at 16 in Texas. You could drink at 18 in Louisiana still. So I went to Parkdale Mall in Beaumont, Texas, and they had a store there called the Tender Shop. And when you walked into it, it was one of those stores that just the smell of the tobacco just overloaded you.
Love that.
And so I went in and I bought a pipe. So I've had a pipe since I was 16 years old. I'm 50 now. Of course, I got. I was thinking, well, I don't know what kind of tobacco to get. I wanted something that smelled good. So I ended up with the thing that obviously any 16-year-old pipe smoker is probably going to end up with is a cherry, some really over the top cherry bomb type pipe mixture. And I got that, and I smoked it, and the room note was great. Everybody liked the way it smelled. So I kept smoking it for, that was the only kind of pipe tobacco that I had. And it was the only kind that I would smoke. And so for me, it was always more about the pipe itself than it was what I was putting in it. And of course, the cherry tobacco, you'd always lament the fact that it never tastes as good as it smelled. It's like, man, it smells like it would
Yeah.
taste great, and it burnt my tongue. It was just all the problems you have with smoking that high sugar content tobacco. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't know that about you with like Tolkien, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's who we're talking about. I've seen so many videos where guys have talked about how Tolkien was like a big influence on them, and the Lord of the Rings and that series, and actually Fallon came out with. I think it was I think Lord of the Rings, like giant church wardens based on the
yeah.
movie.
So I've got 4 or 5 church wardens around this office that I smoke religiously to this day, and they're ones that I've had for years. And then when the Lord of the Rings movies came out again, for me, I would smoke a pipe a couple of times a year. Usually, I'd smoke it more in the wintertime, usually around the holidays. Cigar bars got real popular in Austin when I was living in Austin. So, and I was the guy that would be having the pipe at the end of the bar, and it was just something that I did occasionally.
I have
And
yet to do that. I have yet to smoke a pipe in public. So
really,
tell me about that. Like what kind of like reaction did you get at the cigar bar when you're sitting there smoking your pipe?
my when we lived in Austin, my wife, she worked for a real estate development called Blue Star Development, and Blue Star is, and I'm sure you're going to be a big fan of this, knowing that you're from Philadelphia. But Blue Star Development is owned by a guy that owns a football team you may have heard of called the Dallas Cowboys. It was owned by
Jerry
Jerry
Jones? Oh,
Jones.
really?
Yeah. So they had this big party one time
Oh, Blue Star, right? Yeah.
at this cigar bar in Austin, and that's where the real estate development was. And I was smoking this pipe, and Stephen Jones, his son, came up and goes, man, that smells great. My grandfather used to have a pipe. And we sat there and we talked for a good 45 minutes about, that's like everybody's grandfather smoked, but mine smoked cigarettes. Mine didn't smoke a pipe. A good friend of the family, guy named Jim Prevost, he smoked a pipe. And that's the only person that I ever knew other than me that actually smoked a pipe growing up, was just one guy. So, and then in public, usually people are pretty supportive of it. The ones that get it, they get it. And then the ones that are like, hey man, that's something you don't see every day. That's kind of old school, you know?
So you either get like appreciation or shock.
Yeah. It's usually just kind of like, what are you? They talk to you like, is this guy like an eccentric, or is he going to, and then once they start talking to you, you usually crack a few jokes, and they're like, hey man, this guy's not so bad. And maybe, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, I talked about that in my first episode, how I got introduced to pipe smoking, and I did the same thing. As soon as I saw that guy, I was like, I got to talk to him. I got to find out what's going on there. You know what I mean? So I assume you get that, more positive than negative. I mean,
Oh
I
yeah.
would
No, no,
like to think that anyway.
I've never had anybody come up to me and say, "Excuse me, sir, could you put that out?" That's never happened.
Right.
It's
That's
always
cool.
been,
That's cool.
like I've had people that have, like, in a bar where you can't, like, usually cigar bars, they've got the no smoking ordinance in Houston now, so you can't really smoke in hardly any restaurants anymore unless they're specifically designated for it. But if you go into
Yeah, the
a
tobacco
place,
shops.
there's a few bars where you can have spirits and cigars and tobacco. They don't let cigarettes, oddly enough, but they'll let pipes and they'll let cigars. Um, and
Yeah, that's
and
interesting.
you'll some people even scoot closer because they like the smell. They're like, I'm just going to scoot a little closer so I can smell, because I'm enjoying the aroma. So
So, when did you start getting into it like a little bit more seriously? Like, because you said when you started out, it was like just during the winter time or a couple times a year. When do you think you started, it becoming more of
Well,
a
as
hobby?
far as the smoking aspect of it, it really picked up for me during COVID, and and that's when I also started making pipes. Was during the COVID shutdown. You had all this free time, and some people were making sourdough bread. Some people were getting into whatever they were getting into, and my wife had bought me this thing called a man crate, which I guess they pop up on your social media feeds every once in a while. And in this crate, it had a vise, a file, a pre-drilled block. It had the chamber and it had the airway already drilled in it. And then you had to shape it into some sort of a pipe.
With like a
So
hand file, right? Yeah, they sell
right,
those blocks on like Smoking Pipes
yeah,
website and Pipes and Cigars. Yep.
yeah. So then I whittled on this pipe during the COVID lockdown, and then I ordered some tobacco to smoke in it. And I really have to give you credit for sort of helping define my palate as far as tobacco goes, because I remember I always wanted to just talk about the pipes. It's like briarwood, olive wood, cherry wood pipe. I mean, whatever, the material that's used to make the pipes. And you started talking tobacco with me. And then I think eventually I didn't know anything that you were talking about. And eventually you kind of said, and you just, in disbelief, you went, "What are you smoking?" And I was like, I was
That's where you get like a pipe enthusiast meets a tobacco enthusiast.
yeah, and you were like, "What are you smoking?" Which I don't think I've ever had that question asked to me so literally before, because you were literally asking me what
Yeah,
I was
yeah. Oh,
smoking.
yeah, exactly. Right. Well, we have a mutual friend, and that's how we know each other. And I knew you for a few years before I even knew you were into pipe smoking. Matter of fact, you're the first person that I've met or that I knew, or a friend of mine that was even into pipes and pipe tobacco. So I was
Yeah,
like blown away when you started. Our mutual friend said, Jay makes pipes, and I was like, what? I was like, come on, for real? And it took me a while to really accept that. So that's when we started talking. And then I sent you because I've told this story already, but like when I started, really collecting tobacco, I had all these different blends. My cellar is very wide, but it's not deep because I was always trying to find the next blend, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
trying to just sample all these different types. So that's when I said, I'm going to send you a little sample pack.
right, right.
So I sent you some I tried to mix it up where I sent you some Virginia and then some Burley and some English blends and stuff like that.
So prior to your sample pack, I would. I'm ashamed to say, although I've had a pipe all these years, I've just smoked the rudimentary. Like 1Q is my favorite. It's still you call
Yeah,
them
that's a
codger
lot of
blends,
people. A
you
lot of
know.
people, yeah.
Yeah, I just had just a standard, a standard go to tobacco, and I didn't really have the full appreciation for it until I got that sample
What was
pack
the
from you.
blend that really like opened your eyes? Do you
Well,
remember?
the Seattle plum pudding was just
Oh,
it
okay.
was just it was just wonderful. I mean,
Yeah, so,
and I just sat there and I was like, oh man, it's kind of like you've been eating hamburger your whole life and somebody makes you a steak and you're like, holy smokes, what the hell was I thinking? You know?
right. That's
Yeah,
why I was so blown away when
yeah,
you were telling me the stuff you were smoking.
yeah. It was
Oh,
like
that was fun though.
twigs and stems compared to what you sent me, and then you opened my eyes, and now I don't have a real deep cellar, but I went to the shop today and was talking to Mark about coming and doing this interview, and we smoked some haunted bookcase,
Bookshop.
haunted
Yeah.
bookshop, yeah, and it the nicotine content
Yeah,
is really
it
high in
is.
that one because I just kind of I was like I got my little buzz going, and I'm like, so a lot of the tobaccos that I would smoke would be I was doing something. I was working. I was, I'd either be working at my computer or I'd be trying to write something or I'd be woodworking or I used to smoke my pipe when I was mowing the yard, back, in the early spring when it's not so friggin' oppressively hot. I was that guy, wearing his golf shoes and smoking a pipe as he's pushing a lawnmower. It looked like something from the
Yeah, but that's
50s. It
when
was
you smoke
ridiculous.
one,
But
one Q. That's what that's for. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
exactly.
Prince Albert. That's what it's
Exactly.
for.
Yes.
Well, what's funny is
That
you
is what
say
it's for.
that the pipe is what drew you in. I mean, that's what drew me in too. Initially, was just that whole nostalgia, slower pace, counterculture thing. You know what I mean? It's a take me. It's a time. I call it the time machine. You know what I mean? It takes me back,
Huh.
takes you away from technology, and and all that stuff. But once I started sampling the tobaccos, then that's what grabbed me. And I was like, oh my god, I didn't even know this was a thing. Like I was already happy, just playing around, you know what I mean, sitting in a quiet chair with the pipe. But then when I realized how good the tobacco could be, then I was like, oh my god, I gotta start sampling, and I just started doing a ton
Yeah.
of ordering, which right now I'm like really slowing up my ordering because I have so much opened and I have so much unopened that I got to stop myself from even ordering because I'm like, it's just getting ridiculous. Like, there's so many blends I want to get to that are not even open yet, but I'm like, I have all these
Yeah.
jars, tins open, they're jarred, and it's you have to spend for or at least for me, you got to spend some time with the blend. You can't have one bowl and just jar it and forget it because you need to have a bunch of different bowls of it in different pipes. And for me, I like different beverages to try it with. I
Yeah.
always, I kind
Yeah.
of put my tobacco in one of two camps. Is it a coffee or is it a tea blend? Because a lot of my Virginias are tea blends. They don't go great with coffee. Most of my tobacco does go well with coffee, but
Yeah, I would have to say for me, tea is the better choice. I love coffee. I like coffee for it by itself. Just I drink a lot of espresso. We've got an espresso machine, so I usually have a double shot of espresso every morning. And there's a tobacco. I don't. It's called Winding Road, and that's the one when I'm drinking a cup of coffee. I like that particular tobacco for some reason. Don't ask me why, but I like it. And then if I'm having tea, there's one called Rainy Day, which is an aromatic, and it's again, it's one of those I can load up, and I have a home office, so when I'm able to work from home on the days I work from home, I just open these windows on the side of either side of me, and I'm able to sit at this desk and enjoy a pipe while I'm working, which is just one of life's great pleasures for me, really, because it combines, I don't know why it enhances the work, but it almost feels like you're not working
yeah, I know
even though
that.
you are,
I know what that's like.
yeah.
So give me you have a daily routine with the pipe, or you're just be able to get in a few blends a week, or
So if I didn't control myself, I'd probably smoke. I thought about this because when I listened to your two broadcasts, if I had my choice on a perfect day for me, I would wake up and I would usually have my espresso and a morning pipe, and then I'd go,
what are you
probably
smoking?
while I'm usually, like I said, I like that winding road, but it's usually I'll even smoke a 1Q, or I'll smoke just something mild usually in the
Morning.
mornings.
Okay.
Low low nicotine because I'm getting the kick from the
Okay.
coffee, and I'm not really going for, the high nicotine gives me a buzz. So if I'm trying to do something, then I prefer not to have a buzz
Yeah,
while I'm
me
trying to
too.
do it. So I get the dog. I've got this big dog that's wonderful, and I would love to walk her in the mornings, and then be able to enjoy that. And then I get in, and I'm a big lunch guy. I love having a good lunch. I could skip breakfast and eat lunch at about 11:30, and then after a good lunch, preferably out somewhere, some outdoor cafe someplace. Boy, and then just light up another bowl right then, and probably go with a little bit stronger nicotine count on something like that. Maybe my rainy day, or maybe a good Virginia tobacco, if you've got one. And you kind of turned me on to those, by the way. Um, take them and then store them for a year and then go back and try it and see what it's doing. And then, probably in the evening, I eat a lighter dinner a little bit earlier, and then that's when I would really go for if I can squeeze in an afternoon nap. I'd say probably about 3 or 4 o'clock. I have a cup of black tea, and then just find the highest nicotine count I can find, and, catch my little pedestrian
That's
buzz
funny.
from it, and lay down and take a nice afternoon man nap,
That's so funny.
and then have a little dinner, maybe walk the dog again, and then have some kind of a nightcap. Like there is an actual, I forget who makes it, but there's an actual tobacco that I got called nightcap,
Peterson makes it. Yeah.
and
Used to be
yeah,
Dunhill.
and and then smoke that one and then call it a day.
That
But
sounds like a good day.
that's a perfect day.
Yeah, right.
That is.
All right, let's get into pipes. How long have you been making pipes?
So I started. I whittled my first one, and I say whittled because I literally whittled it during the COVID shutdown. So that would have been, what is that?
2020?
2020. Yeah. So 2020, and then like most things, if I get interested in something, I tend to get interested in it and focus a lot of time on it. And so I whittled this pipe by hand, and then I went to I ordered another couple of blocks from Amazon, just just pre-drilled blocks because I didn't have really any of the equipment to make an actual pipe. I could drill it, but I had a hand drill. I even had a you know a, a drill press, but you can't really. That's not really what you need. I didn't have the right equipment, so I whittled this pipe, and took the dog for this to this dog park by my house, and I'm listening to a podcast, oddly enough, a History of Rome podcast, and I fall asleep on this bench like an old man, and this guy comes up and says, "Hey, you smoke a pipe?" I was like, "What? Yeah, you smoke a pipe?" I was like, "Oh." After about the third time he asked, I woke up. And I said, "Yeah, yeah, I smoke a pipe." Matter of fact, I was so proud of it. I go, "I made this one," and I showed it to him. He's like, "Oh, well, that's interesting." And
That's funny.
and he goes, "Yeah, I go, he goes, I make pipes." And I'm like, "Really?" And he showed me this pipe that he was smoking. And I was like, "Holy smokes." I looked at this thing. It was beautiful. I was like, "Oh my God." I mean, this is a great pipe. This is just a piece of garbage I whittled on during COVID. You're a true artisan. I go, "Have you ever had an apprentice?" And he looked at me like, "Are you?" It took a second to register what I was asking, and he was like, "Well, yeah, yeah, I'll teach you how to make pipes." It was like an apprentice. It was like, what is kind of weird question is that? That's not something you're used to somebody asking you. And the fellow's name is Mark Dominguez. Is our domain is really, if he's Cajun, he's from Louisiana, but in Texas it can go either or. But Mark Domain, and he owns a company called Lone Star Briar Works, and he took me on and he let me come into his shop, and he kind of taught me everything that I know about making pipes. And he's just really, I can't say enough nice things about him. He's just this nice guy that kind of took me under his wing and said, "Well, this is, if you're going to make it this way, you need to do this." He taught me how to work a lathe. He taught me how to, hold the all the tools that you needed, the chisels and things like that as the lathe spinning. And then he's progressed up to a metal lathe, and he's taught me how to work to work with that, and the sandblasting and rustication, which is, I don't know if you're familiar, if you've ever
Yeah.
had a rusticated pipe.
Sure,
But
of course.
he's just really kind of got me to another level with making pipes. I couldn't have done it without
Where do
him.
you guys get your briar?
Okay, so the briar, there's a couple of different places that you can order briar online from. Vermont Freehand is where I get a lot of it, and there's two types of briar. There's a Mimeo and a min and a and at first, I was so inexperienced with briar. I thought that was the type of wood, but no, it's the actual guy from Italy that cuts it. His
Mimo?
name's Mimeo. Yeah, there's Mimo and Mimeo. There's two of them, and so most of the good briar that I get comes from those sources, and you get them through Vermont Freehand. There's a couple of different places. The names escape me now, But and for it starts out with, you can get large ebauchons, which is usually for making just smaller pipes, and then you can get some plateaus, which are really good for making sort of Canadian style pipes. And most of the pipes that you tend to like, they have that longer
Shank.
shank, so you end up having to use a plateau as opposed to just an
Gotcha.
ebauchon. Some of the church wardens, you'll see the small little part, the small little briar church wardens. You see, it starts out with a really small ebauchon, and then they have that long stem, which is
Right.
usually vulcanite, or
Yeah.
there's a bunch of different materials that you're making stems out of. But I've made stems out of all kinds of stuff. Out of there's pen blanks that are usually acrylic. There's a material that I really like, Eldritch rod, which is a blend. I believe it's a blend of vulcanite and acrylic, but it's a nice softer blend, and and it's easier to work with, and I think it's more comfortable to smoke because I like to I hold the pipe while I'm working, so if I can't bite it or if it hurts my jaw, and I think the acrylic are sometimes too hard, they're uncomfortable if you're
You
going
like
to just sit there for
clinchers.
a while. Yeah, if you're going to sit there for a long time and you got this piece of acrylic in between your teeth, it hurts my teeth after a while, hurts my jaw.
Do
So
did you figure out, like, do you have a specific shape you like making the most, or not?
yeah, well, when you start out, you know, you when I started out, I was always trying to look for just like these unique shapes. I needed, and the briar, when you're working with it, it'll tell you kind of what it wants to be to a certain extent, because there's the shape of the plateau is going to determine what kind of pipe you can make. Like you can look at when we get a big bag in, we'll look at them and we'll say, okay, that one's going to be a billiard, that one's going to be a bulldog, that one right there is nice. It's a really nice one. It could be a Canadian. That one is going to be. There's a little pipe I like to make with the ebauchons called a devil ants, and if you wanted to see an image of it, you could Google Kevin Costner, Hatfields and McCoy, and
Yeah.
there's always a picture of him
Where
sitting
it
there
came
smoking.
from? Yeah.
Yeah, he's always sitting there smoking that little pipe of his, and that's a particularly good pipe. I
You
think
like
it's a
that?
little underrated. It's an underrated pipe because a lot of people look at it and they'll be like, it's silly,
I think a
but
lot of guys like it, actually, but
it's a good pipe, man. I mean, a lot of the older see, because it's such an old man's hobby, so to speak. We're on the younger side of this equation, you and I,
sure.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and but so the older guys, man, they're straight. A lot of them are billiards all the way, and a lot of them like
I like a billiard.
Mershams. Yeah, I've never gotten into other. My favorite material are the briar pipes, though. Olive wood is a wonderful material to work with because it makes such a beautiful pipe.
Yeah, it is pretty.
And then you know, but I've used pear, I've used cherry, I've used there's a bogwood right now that I'm drawing a blank on it, but I've used it. It's an interesting because it has this little crosshatch little pattern to it. It's really an unusual wood to work with, and when you're working with it, it just chalks
All
up.
right, since we're talking about pipes and you're a pipe maker, are you taking any commissions right now?
Uh, yes, I have to be kind of careful with it because I do. I'm not retired yet, so I haven't been able to devote 100% of all of my time to making pipes. So I have to, if I put it out there, I'll get kind of swamped with orders because I've got a lot of people that I know, and particularly around the holidays. So I have to kind of limit it. But yes, I do take commissions, and I've made I think all last year, almost every pipe I made was sold before I even finished it, and then I was putting it out on Facebook, and they were just selling really quick, and then I took a step back and I said, okay, I need to, I've had some early success in selling these things, so I need to just slow my roll a little bit and get and start making some pipes that I think are the best pipes that I can make. and
Hone
then
your craft a little bit. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, and then yeah, and then show it, and see what the market thinks of it. So I have this concept that I'm kind of working on, for a style of pipe that I'm gonna make, and I put some pictures of the first two of the series, and on my Instagram, and
I
just
forced you
gonna.
to get that Instagram page.
You did.
What's the handle on that, Jay?
It's my full name, Joseph C. Blanchard, and the Instagram account, my Facebook account is me, and it's doing what I do, but the Instagram account is all going to be just devoted to pipes.
Okay. So I'm going to post a couple pictures of Jay's pipes on my Instagram, which is the Talking Tobacco Instagram page. And do you want to give out your Facebook, Jay? I mean, is it open to the public or no?
Yeah, well, my Facebook is open to the public. Just anybody, if you do want to commission a pipe, or you want to start talking about what kind of pipe you like, you can just IM me on Facebook. It's under Joseph C. Blanchard, and it's Houston. It should pop right up.
All right. So I'll find, I mean, actually have your correct spelling and everything in the show notes of the podcast. So check out the show notes and you'll see Jay's Facebook and Instagram.
So on my Facebook, there's a lot of other. That's just me. That's my regular stuff. What I do. But the for the Instagram, it's just going to be pipes. That's all I'm going to put on there. Pictures of pipes, and you can IM me, and just we could start a conversation and figure out what it is that you like. If there's a certain type of pipe that you always wanted, I'll do my best to recreate it and make you one. We'll take it from there.
All right, my man, perfect. I just wanted to get you in here for the first time and tell your story. Next time you come in, we're going to smoke a pipe next time and get into like some deep dive tobacco talk. Does that sound good?
Oh, please. Yes, I look forward to that.
All right, my man. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, brother. You take care, man.
All right, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with J Blanchard. If you have any questions for me or want to hit me up, I'm on Instagram at Talkin' Tobacco. Or if you want to email the show, it is talkingtobaccopodcast@gmail.com. Appreciate this support, and I'll catch you on the next one.